Hello everyone, it's me, Aaron, Professor Thorgy, your guide to all things geeky, and welcome to another episode of Comic Class, the show every single Wednesday on this channel where we just geek out about comic books, and it's the last Wednesday of the month. Well, okay, actually it isn't the actual last Wednesday of the month, but it's a 5-week month, so it doesn't really count, so, you know, it's a whole big thing. Anyway, it's that time of the month in which we talk about all the DC Rebirth books. That's right, if you've been watching this channel for a while, then you know that at the end of every single month, I look back and cover all the brand new DC Rebirth books that came out in that month, and today we have 2 episodes going on. In this episode, I'm going to cover all the brand new series, so that means all the brand new Rebirth issues and all the brand new #1s. And in the second episode, which is coming up later today, I'm going to look back at all those series that started in previous months and are returning, and give you kind of an update about how I'm feeling about them now. So, if you want to see that second episode, make sure you click that subscribe button so that way you don't miss it. And if you missed any of our previous Rebirth episodes, then make sure you stay until the end of the episode because I'll put a link to them there. But for now, let's go ahead and get started. Now I'm going to start with Red Hood and the Outlaws, and this was probably the book that I was looking forward to the most, but for all the wrong reasons, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. If you've been watching my previous Rebirth recaps, then you know I have been loving Rebirth. Rebirth has practically been batting 1,000 with me. There hasn't been a single Rebirth title yet that I've disliked. There've been a couple that I was like, whatever on, and I came in pretty neutral on it, but there haven't been any that I thought was bad. There haven't been any that I looked at and went, oh, nobody should read that. Even the ones that I'm neutral on, I can look at and go, you know what, I can see an audience for it out there, whatever. So at this point, you're probably wondering, why on earth was this the book I was looking forward to the most, and what do I mean by for all the wrong reasons? Well, you see, this book is still being written by Scott Lobdell, who is the guy who has been writing the Red Hood for the past 5 years. He wrote him in that first Red Hood and the Outlaw series, and in the previous Red Hood and Arsenal series. And I didn't care for either of those. That first Red Hood and the Outlaw series, I was turned off by the first issue so much that people kept telling me, no, it gets better, just stick with it. I couldn't do it. I kept trying to go back and read it, and it just never once worked for me. And Red Hood and Arsenal, I just thought that series was flat out bad. I never liked any of that series. So, even though we were all saying, please put someone else on the Red Hood, when I heard that he was still going to be writing this character, I thought, well, you know, on the plus side, this will be the one book from Rebirth that I dislike, so that everyone out there who keeps calling me a DC fanboy for praising everything that DC does, and by the way, if you watch the movie reviews on this channel, you know the irony of that statement, then this will be that one book that I can come in here and say, no, guys, this one's bad. I dislike this one. I really like this one. It's good. What the hell is happening with Rebirth? How the hell did they make everything good in their universe? Oh my gosh, guys, this thing fixed so many problems that I have with the Red Hood in the New 52. I have been bugged so much by the fact that the Red Hood is just way too jokey and way too fun. It's like the Red Hood should be way more tormented, guys. And I know that he's had tormented moments throughout the New 52, but he is just way too upbeat and jokey for the most part. And also, he's going around just murdering people with guns, and I've always hated that Batman was like, yeah, don't use guns around me. Blam. Okay, well, aside from that, after this, starting now, no more guns around me. Oh my god, are you shooting someone as I tell you this? So yeah, I've had a lot of problems with the way that the Red Hood has been portrayed in the New 52, but in this issue, in this Rebirth one-shot, you get the origin story of Jason Todd all over again, and it's that classic story of him trying to steal wheels off of the Batmobile. And what I love is that Batman sees him doing this, and he just goes, are you hungry? You need something to eat? And I was like, that's what I love about Batman. That right there is the Batman that I love. The Batman who doesn't just see someone breaking the law and then goes in to kick his ass. No, Batman is the guy who wants to help. Batman is a guy who, if he sees any way to save a person, to keep them from going down the dark path and from becoming a criminal, he will do it. And I loved seeing him try to raise up Jason, a kid who is disturbed and does have problems, and trying to set him on the correct path. And then in the present day, I love seeing Batman and Red Hood actually going at each other. They are not buddy-buddy on this. Batman is very opposed to the way that the Red Hood operates, and he tells him, I'm watching you, and if you ever get out of line, I will bring you down myself. And I was like, that's the relationship that Batman and the Red Hood should have. But I also love that Jason makes his argument in here. He's not just, I'm going around murdering people and being dark and edgy because of all the things that have happened to me. He tells Batman, listen, I have to go places that you as Batman cannot. There are some things that you just simply cannot do in the city because you're Batman. You need a guy like me out there. And it's like, that's actually kind of a good argument for the Red Hood to make. So this Rebirth one-shot, it sets up Red Hood's mission. It sets up his and Batman's relationship. And it gives you so much drama and backstory, and it really defines the character of Jason Todd. I was blown away by this issue. But I thought to myself, you know what? Jeff Johns said that he worked with every single one of these writers on those Rebirth issues, so maybe that wasn't Scott Lobdell's work. Maybe that was Jeff Johns. Issue number 1 of the series, though, that's all Scott Lobdell. And it's still actually pretty darn good. Oh my gosh. Guys, you gotta give me a second here on this one. I cannot believe the fact that I'm about to say the Scott Lobdell Red Hood series is really darn good. In the series, you see the Red Hood going undercover and working with Black Mask to find out what he has planned, so he has to pretend like he's a villain, and in that issue, he ends up meeting up with Artemis, who has always kind of been a darker version of Wonder Woman, and we all know that in an upcoming issue, he's going to run into Bizarro, and they're going to end up forming a team. Now, we have yet to actually see this team form, so I don't know what the team dynamics are going to end up being, but just this as a Red Hood series, and him going undercover and seeing everything from his point of view and going into his backstory, he's handling it very well. I gotta hand it to Scott Lobdell. He has really turned me around on this. Now, speaking of Batman anti-heroes, the Harley Quinn series has returned. It did not get a Rebirth one-shot, but in all honesty, it didn't need a Rebirth one-shot. This book didn't change at all. As I said, Jeff Johns worked with every single one of these writers on those Rebirth one-shots. You can tell he didn't touch Harley at all. He just looked over at the Harley book and said, just keep on doing what you're doing. That book sells incredibly well. It's got a very strong fan base. People love that book at DC. So yeah, it's the exact same book that it was. In fact, it is so the exact same book, they didn't even really try to get rid of any of the characters or declutter the cast so that way it would make it easier for new readers. No, half of this book is just them introducing all the characters that they established in the previous Harley Quinn series. And I gotta admit, that was a little bit tiresome because it's just several pages in a row of here's these 12 characters, here's 9 characters over here, here's all my pets, there's these 2 weird characters with incredibly crazy backstories. It was a bit much to take in because I'll admit to you guys, I only read the first couple issues of the previous Harley Quinn series and I didn't continue after that, just simply because it wasn't for me. And I read this issue and went, yeah, it's still not for me. But here's the thing, I'm not saying it's bad, at all. Harley Quinn is a comedy series, and when it comes to humor, humor is subjective. And I know that all forms of entertainment are subjective. Humor is more subjective than anything. And what I mean by that is that you could have one joke and tell it to 2 people, and one person could find it hilarious, and another person doesn't find it funny at all. And it doesn't mean that that joke actually is funny or is not funny. It just means that it only appeals to certain people. And this book is loaded with sex humor and puns. I don't really care for sex humor and puns. They're just not a form of comedy that I really enjoy. Just not my thing. I mean, for example, Harley Quinn has a pet dachshund, aka a wiener dog, and there's a moment in there in which he says, that's the only weenie I allow in my bed anymore. I was like, I'm sure someone out there found that hilarious. I just find it kind of stupid. And there's also a stuffed beaver that is like rotting and old, but Harley thinks it's talking to her. And you better believe they get the most out of having a talking beaver in this book. I've never found that funny at all, but I'm sure someone out there does. And I've looked around the internet, I've seen tons of readers, both men and women alike, coming together and saying, this book is hilarious, this book says some great stuff, I really enjoy this series. So, hey man, it's just not for me. And that's fine. So I'm not really going to be talking about this issue anymore going on, simply because it kind of be a waste for me to talk about a book that just doesn't appeal to me. If you have been enjoying the Harley Quinn series, great. If you haven't been enjoying it, that's also great. This is a book that appeals to a certain audience. Nothing wrong with being in or out of that audience. Now, moving on to the other Harley Quinn book that came out this month, Suicide Squad got a Rebirth issue and a one-shot issue. And the Rebirth issue, I looked around online, it got a lot of kind of fair to meh reviews. I actually really liked the Rebirth issue. The Rebirth issue is all about Harley and Deadshot and Captain Boomerang going over to China to try and disable a superpower bomb that was going to give this whole group of people superpowers. But at the same time, Amanda Waller was trying to make her case to the president about why they needed the Suicide Squad, and he said, listen, I'm not having this happen on my watch. I disagree with it. And he said, what if I put someone in charge of that team who you did trust? What about Colonel Rick Flag? And he goes, yeah, whatever happened to Rick Flag? He was a war hero, but I haven't heard much about him since he came back from the war. Turns out that the reason why he hasn't heard from Rick Flag since he returned home from the war is because while Rick Flag was on active duty, his commanding officer gave him an order. He told him and his entire squad to go out on a dangerous mission, and Rick Flag looked at that mission and said, this mission will not succeed, and it's going to get my entire squad killed. I'm not sending them on that. It's my job to make sure that they get home safe, that they all come home. This will get every single member of my squad killed. I'm not sending them on that mission. So his commanding officer went above himself to someone secretly in the government and had him put Rick Flag in Guantanamo Bay and erased all records of him so that he would be rotting in that prison without anyone knowing that he was there. Now, I'm going to go out on a little theory here and say that there is a big plot twist coming way down the line that says that that secret government agent that his commanding officer went to is going to be revealed to actually be Amanda Waller. And the reason why I say that is because in this issue, Amanda Waller goes to Rick Flag there in prison, tells him about the Suicide Squad, and says, listen, you want to make sure that your team gets home safe? This is your team now. There are threats out there that no one knows about, and they will endanger lives here at home and around the world. I need someone who can go on these dangerous missions and whose biggest concern is to get his team home. And that's what she says to convince him to join. I would not be shocked if Amanda Waller, the moment that this commanding officer came to her, went, I can play the really long game with this kid. Again, that's just a theory right now, but if it happens, I'm going to come back and say I called it. So anyway, that was my reaction to the Rebirth issue. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was actually a really great start to this series and a great introduction to this new Rick Flag. However, then the actual issue number 1 came out. And you know how I said I've been enjoying all these issues and there hasn't been one that I've disliked yet? This was that first one. This was that first one that I disliked. And part of the reason why I disliked it is because it's being drawn by Jim Lee. And when I heard that Jim Lee was going to be on a bi-monthly book, I went, there is no way that's happening. Bi-monthly can mean 2 things. Does it mean once every 2 months? Because that's the only way Jim Lee could hit that deadline. I read this. The story is divided into 2 parts. The actual current day Suicide Squad mission that we are following the entire team on is only half the book. The back half of the book is a backup origin story for Deadshot. And I looked at that and went, this is why Jim Lee is able to do this book. This is why Jim Lee is able to do a book that comes out every 2 weeks. He's only doing half the book. And they have to divide the book up in order to accommodate him because Jim Lee is such a big name that they're like, listen, we will do whatever we need on this book in order to make sure that you get on this book. And honestly, it damages the book. Jim Lee's name is not worth putting on this book if you're going to have to divide the book up in half, because that backup Deadshot story, yeah, it was pretty good. It was. I enjoyed it, but there was no reason for it to be there. It was unnecessary. And as for the actual Suicide Squad part of the story, you know, the whole reason why we bought this issue, nothing really happens in it. They get the team together, blast them off in space, and then Killer Croc pukes in his own helmet, and the big crisis of the issue is whether or not he will drown in his own vomit. I swear to you, that is true. The ship almost explodes because they're trying to get to Croc on the ship to make sure that he doesn't drown in his own vomit. That's all the drama they were able to fit into that first issue because they had to divide it in half. And also, it's kind of dumb drama. That's just not entertaining to watch someone almost choke on his own puke in a space helmet. So there you go. I hate saying it, but we now officially have the first book from Rebirth that I didn't enjoy, Suicide Squad number 1. However, Suicide Squad Rebirth, which was not drawn by Jim Lee, as I said, I actually did enjoy it. So maybe there is hope for this book yet, because let's be honest, Jim Lee is not going to be on this series more than maybe 4 issues. Next up is All-Star Batman. Now this has been one of the most anticipated series of Rebirth because it is Scott Snyder, the guy who did the Batman series for New 52, the series that pretty much everybody agreed was the best thing to come out of the New 52, returning with a brand new Batman series. It's going to feature some all-star artist talent. It's going to focus more on his villains, which everybody loves the Batman villains. I gotta be totally honest with you guys. And here comes my unpopular opinion of the week. I thought Scott Snyder's Batman run was just kind of okay. I really enjoyed The Court of Owls. I thought that was amazing. But then Death of the Family I thought was just meh. Year Zero I thought was interesting but went on for too long. Then he returned with another Joker story, which I thought was actually pretty darn good, but I didn't really like how it ended. And then the whole Gordon as Batman thing, I thought, it's okay. It's all okay. So in the end, I really just enjoyed one part of his Batman run, and the rest of it I thought was just fine. So when I read this, kind of felt the same way. Kind of looked at it like, it's fine. I will say that I think that the concept of this storyline is pretty cool. He has to escort Two-Face across the country, and Two-Face has been gathering secret information on everyone in Gotham, and Two-Face has said, hey, if we reach our destination, if Batman actually gets me to where he's going, I'm going to release all that information on all of you. However, if any of you decide to stop Batman, well then I will share some of my wealth with you. So now basically Batman is being hunted by everyone across the country. It's actually kind of a cool idea. However, I've just always kind of had a problem with the way that Scott Snyder writes Batman. He writes him a little bit too dickish, but also a little too OP. Like, Batman is just too amazing. He can do everything in a Scott Snyder run. And in this issue, there was a moment in which he gets shoved into a pile of logs and a chainsaw, and in 5 seconds, he chainsaws the wood to look like himself so that the villain who is chasing him will think it's him laying there in the grass. And I'm like, okay, even all those people out there who say that Batman can do everything would look at that and go, Batman can't do that. That's just crazy. So yeah, I gotta be honest with you guys, I thought this issue was just okay, and I know that's pretty much a sin to say about a Scott Snyder Batman book on the internet because the entire internet loves Scott Snyder's Batman, but I'll be totally honest with you. I was praising Scott Snyder's Batman run, I was applying it saying, yeah, you know, he gets Batman, he does a pretty good job on it. The moment that I read the Rebirth Batman and Detective comic books by Tom King and James Tynion, I looked at them and went, oh no wait, that's Batman. That's the Batman that I love. Both these books are featuring the Batman that I want to see. That's the Batman that I've always loved. And then I looked over at Scott Snyder's Batman and went, yeah, you are kind of crazy and dickish. Bit of an a-hole. Also way too perfect and OP. Yeah, I don't know about these books anymore. These books, however, that's the Batman that I want to read. Now next up is Deathstroke, and I was incredibly interested in this book, and I'll tell you why. It's being written by Christopher Priest. And if you've never heard me talk about Christopher Priest, he's the dude who made Black Panther awesome. He is the guy who made Black Panther the character that we all love today. Before he wrote Black Panther, nobody really cared about that character. They knew that he existed. They knew that Wakanda was some kind of a scientifically advanced city. Nobody really cared. He's the guy who came in, said, here's how amazing Wakanda is, here's how incredible the Black Panther is, here's how much of a badass he can be. He's the one who made that character the character that we all know and love today. However, he did not have a good relationship with Marvel. Now, I'm not going to come in here and say what happened because it is a bunch of he said, she said, back and forth going on. But yeah, basically from what we can tell, Marvel did not treat him well. So he said, screw you Marvel, I'm out, I'm never working with you guys again. In fact, he basically said, screw you to all comic books. He wrote a bunch of independent stuff, but then he kind of vanished for several years. And this is really his big return to comics. This is his big return to one of the big two major companies. So everybody was looking at this like, what's going to happen? What is Christopher Priest's Deathstroke going to be like? This is such a weird idea. No one saw this coming at all. And then you read it, and honestly, this is the most Christopher Priest book I have ever read. Everything that defines who Christopher Priest is as a writer is in this Deathstroke issue. Here's the thing though, I really like Christopher Priest as a writer. so I really like this Deathstroke. It's really dark and gritty, but there's a sliver of humor in there that keeps you entertained. It does a great job of keeping the story lively by bouncing back and forth between the past and the present. It covers a lot of relevant social issues and political issues all around the world. All these things are things that Christopher Priest is known for. It even has the trademark Christopher Priest title cards. Yeah, if you read this issue, you know how every couple of pages it starts with the title card that gives you the title of the scene? That's the thing Christopher Priest is known for. He did that in his Black Panther run, he did that in his Quantum and Woody run. In fact, there even came a time in which he said, I'm sick of doing this, I'm not going to do this anymore. And company said, yeah, but we actually like that you do that, we want you to keep doing that. Which has me wondering, when Christopher Priest got in this book, did he say, yeah, I'm not going to put that in this book, and DC just said, the hell you aren't, we bought Christopher Priest, we're going to get those Christopher Priest title cards. So this new Deathstroke series is going to be all about the relationship that Deathstroke has with his family, which is severely damaged, by the way, but something is forcing all of them to come together if they want to survive, and honestly, I think that's a great idea for a Deathstroke story, and it's being told, as I said, by Christopher Priest, and just to reiterate, it's great seeing that writer coming back and still being at the top of his game. I'm really looking forward to where this series goes. Okay, what do you say we move into the complete and total opposite of Deathstroke? Supergirl. Now, if you've watched this channel, then you know that I wasn't really the biggest fan of the New 52 version of Supergirl. She had a lot of anger issues, she was way more of a loner. Honestly, it was not what Supergirl should be. Don't get me wrong, the series actually was pretty darn good. However, when someone goes into a comic book store and goes, I want to buy Supergirl, that was not the book that Supergirl should be. That was not the book that they are expecting to buy. And I feel like thanks to the TV show, DC has now realized that. DC has now realized, oh, that's what everybody likes about Supergirl. That's what that series should have been. And when you pick up this Rebirth issue, as I've said many times before, the whole point of the Rebirth one-shots is to introduce you to these characters, is to introduce you to the new writers, to the new storylines that are coming up, to the new world surrounding these characters. And honestly, I think this book actually did that pretty darn well. It actually did a really good job of establishing who Supergirl is and who she is going to be in this upcoming series. And who that is completely different from the character that we have gotten so far in the New 52. And honestly, that's the weirdest part of this Rebirth one-shot. As I said, it does a really good job of introducing new readers. However, they have to change and just shove in there so much new stuff and completely make her such a different character that if you were a fan of that old New 52 comic, you'll be reading this like, what? Who is this person? Don't get me wrong, I'm far happier with this version of Supergirl than the one that we were getting in the New 52 because this is a Supergirl who, when little girls come to my comic book store, I can give them this issue. And that's what Supergirl should be. It should be a series that little girls can pick up and read and go, oh my gosh, this is a superhero just like me. That's exactly what that series should be. And I read this and went, you know what? That feels like what this is. So good, I'm glad that they are finally doing that. I'm just saying, it's kind of humorous how much stuff they are trying to change all at once. For example, in the New 52, Supergirl didn't have any Earth parents. In the Supergirl TV series, she does. So they introduced those parents in this issue, and they work for that secret government agency that is also in the Supergirl TV series, and they're assigned to her as her foster parents, and they're coming in like, oh yes, daughter, I'm your parents, and yes, I love you very much, and we've been connected forever. And I'm like, you just met 5 minutes ago. Don't try and shove us in here like it's existed for decades. It just really felt to me like they were just trying to shove it in there like it had always been there and had always existed because they realized, yeah, it probably should have always existed. This is kind of how it always should have been. And they were just really hoping that the readers wouldn't step up and go, hold on, where did they come from? Like they really wanted all the new readers to not ask questions. So yeah, all in all, for a reader like me, I think it's a pretty okay issue. I think it's a pretty decent read, but for that audience that's aimed at, I think it actually succeeds pretty well. So yeah, I think Supergirl is on the right path. But okay, let's go up a notch from Supergirl to Superwoman. Now, this is a book that I was very curious about because it's being drawn by Phil Jimenez, which is great because he is a very talented artist, but it's also being written by Phil Jimenez. And as much as I love his art, I honestly don't think he's ever written anything. I tried researching it. I couldn't find one thing that he had ever written. Maybe he did and I just couldn't find it, but yeah, I think this might be his first job writing, and typically that's not a good thing. It was actually a good thing here. He actually did a great job on this issue. Now what this series is about is that when the New 52 Superman died, he ended up passing on some of his powers to Lois Lane and Lana Lang, and now both of them are Superwoman. Both of them have some of Superman's powers. In fact, Lana Lang actually has brand new powers. She can actually manipulate energy, which is a lot more similar to the blue Superman of the 1990s. Yeah, I never thought that I would say anything that had to do with that blue Superman was cool, but actually kind of cool when it's Lana Lang. And now Lois is going to Lana saying, listen, you help Clark learn how to use his powers, help me learn how to use mine, and then the two of us need to go out there and actually try and protect Metropolis together. Metropolis right now needs 2 more super people, and we're just the Superwomen to do it. Honestly, it's a great story watching her learn how to use her powers, watching her try to convince Lana to become another superhero, watching Lana try to fit into Metropolis, watching the two of them work together. It's actually told incredibly well, and the cliffhanger at the end of the first issue, I don't think it actually happened, but if it did, wow, did not see that coming, and even if it didn't happen, it's a damn good cliffhanger. So yeah, I gotta be totally honest with you, this is my favorite book from all of August. This is my pick of the month. If you have not read any DC Rebirth issues this month and you only have to pick one, that's my highest recommendation. And again, I just have to say this again, Phil Jimenez, way to go, man. Way to go. As I said, I have never read anything by you. You are an incredibly talented writer if this is the kind of stuff that you can do. And lastly, we come out to the book that just came out today, Blue Beetle Rebirth. Now, I was really looking forward to this book for 2 reasons, Ted Kord and Jaime Reyes. I love both those characters as the Blue Beetle. The original Jaime Reyes Blue Beetle series is one of the best books I've read in the last decade. If you have not gotten a chance to ever check out that original Jaime Reyes Blue Beetle series, I highly recommend it. It was an amazing superhero story. Do not read the New 52 stuff. Completely ignore that. Do what this book did and pretend that never happened. And as for Ted Kord, anybody who has ever read any of his stuff from Justice League International to formerly known as the Justice League to any of the old Booster Gold and Blue Beetle storylines, you have a Ted Kord shaped hole in your heart that needs filling. You've been waiting for that character to come back, and now he's finally back and he's being written by Keith Giffen, the guy who made Ted Kord famous in the first place. This should be a slam dunk. It's okay. Yeah, this is probably my biggest disappointment. Honestly, I don't really care for the way that Keith Giffen is writing Jaime. He has him be a little bit too standoffish, and that's not how I want to see Jaime. Granted, in this universe, the Scarab is a lot more aggressive and is trying to take over his body, whereas in the old Jaime Reyes series, the two of them were kind of friends and working together, so I do understand why he'd be a little bit more standoffish, but it's not really the Jaime that I want to see. And also, it's good seeing Paco and Brenda back. His 2 friends, they were amazing supporting characters. However, the dialogue that we get between the 2 of them is kind of dumb. I hate saying it, but in this book, they argue over something that I just looked at and went, is that what he thinks young people argue about? That's kind of ridiculous that anybody would be upset about that. But then when they actually went into action, and it was Jaime and Ted working together, it was still just kind of okay. I mean, I will admit, they go off and they go into a fight, and in the first half of the fight, I wasn't really enjoying it. But in the second half of the fight, when something really weird happens, the dialogue actually did get wittier. It did get better. The quips back and forth were more clever, and I actually really enjoyed the way that Ted Kord was kind of just treating Jaime like, yeah, okay, I don't know, try this. Well, you know, that's kind of your own fault there. Well, you should have listened to me on this one. And Jaime's just there like, I'm being attacked by monsters right now. What is wrong with you? You are not helping. I actually did enjoy that kind of exchange back and forth between the 2 of them. It did eventually grow on me. However, like I said, aside from that, there wasn't really anything in this issue that I found interesting. Nothing really that I found special. And that's a shame because, like I said, Jaime Reyes, that is a guy who had an amazing series, but then the New 52 totally screwed him over. So for anybody out there who is a Jaime Reyes fan, you have been waiting for that moment that he got redeemed. You've been waiting for that series to come along that went, no, we're gonna get Jaime right. And as I read this, I was like, yeah, I still don't think we're there yet. However, most of these Rebirth issues that I found to be just, okay, their actual series have been better. and this was just the Rebirth one-shot, so I am going to continue reading. I'm going to check out the actual series. Hopefully that will be better, but I do also have to say this. The whole point of the Rebirth one-shots is to introduce new readers to these characters. I don't really think it did that good of a job. Like, honestly, I think that if you didn't know what the deal with Jaime Reyes and that scarab on his back was, you don't really get any information on it. I mean, you get Dr. Fate showing up there and saying, oh, it's magic, which is what we read in the Rebirth issue, but aside from that, you don't really get anything on it. You don't really get any backstory on how he got it, what it's doing to him. So, yeah, I gotta say it, I think this is another miss. But that's just how I felt. Let me know in the comments down below how you felt about any of these issues, or you can always contact me on Twitter and Tumblr at Professor Thorgy. And if you want to see any of the future Rebirth videos we do, or any other videos that have to deal with the entire world of geekery, whether it be comic books, video games, or movies, then make sure that you hit that subscribe button. And if you like this episode, or any other episodes that you see on this channel, make sure you share them all around the web and give us a thumb up. It's the best way to help promote this channel. So thanks again for watching, everyone. Come back next time. Bye.